Hi, today we'll talk about alcohol and behavior. As with Chapter 7, much of Chapter 8 content was covered in our in-class activity, but there are a few statistics and cultural considerations that I'd like to go over with you. First, what is alcohol consumption like here in the United States? About half of Americans report current use of alcohol, meaning drinking anything at all in the past 30 days. About 23% of those report binge drinking, meaning 4 or greater drinks in one sitting for women and 5 or greater drinks in one sitting for men. And heavy drinking is those 4 or 5 drinks in one sitting, but doing that 5 or more times in the last 30 days. And about 6.3% report heavy drinking. I wanted to point out as well that most Americans are able to drink in moderation. That is, drink recreationally or within a family setting without it escalating to substance use disorder. Next, let's take a look at binge alcohol use among college students. The red line represents those enrolled in college full-time, while the blue line is those not enrolled in full-time college, and I'm guessing this might include part-time enrollment as well, but the point is that full-time students binge drink more often than not attending college or part-time attending college students. This may be according to what campus you're on. The college culture may support excessive drinking, and there's also factors that come into play, such as getting away from home, getting out from under the supervision of mom and dad for the first time. These type of factors are definitely influential with the new freshman, sophomore college student. Next, let's look at driving under the influence. We see here that the greatest number of drivers under the influence, and this is all self-reported, are 26 to 29-year-olds. I would guess that the 21 to 25-year-olds would have the greatest number of driving under the influence, but this data does not show that. And we'll see that sometimes what we guess would be the conclusion is not supported by the data. Next, let's look at race and ethnicity as it relates to current binge and heavy alcohol use. We see that whites have the greatest alcohol use, followed by Black Americans, followed by Hispanic or Latino Americans. It's interesting to note that Hispanic or Latino Americans have the greatest number, the greatest percentage, that is, of binge use. Next, let's talk about culture and alcohol. What is culture? In general, culture is a system of knowledge, attitudes, beliefs, roles, rituals, symbols, expectations, practices, and communication shared by a large group of people and passed down from one generation to the next. The United States is a big old melting pot, and we may belong to more than one culture or group. Some cultures may endorse alcohol and others may discourage it. Some examples of groups that discourage alcohol use are Latter-day Saints, Seventh-day Adventists, the Mormon Church, and Muslims generally discourage alcohol use. Some groups that may endorse alcohol use are Jewish people in moderation, as well as other European cultures, such as the Italians consider alcohol a food item. The Irish alcohol use among the Irish has historically represented male bonding. So our culture provides us with rules about how we can drink, when we drink, how much we can drink, and how we should act when we drink. We may also, from our culture, gather how to perceive alcohol use. Some of us perceive alcohol use as something for sophisticated and mature people to engage in, that it's sexy to drink. Cultural rules may differ for men versus women. Historically, it's been more acceptable for men to be out in the community at the bar or tavern drinking and purchasing alcohol, though recently it's been more acceptable for women to be out in the community drinking or purchasing alcohol. There's also a great deal of ceremonial meaning attached to alcohol use. Again, the example of Jewish people, that they endorse moderate drinking within the family, and it's often attached to ritual or sacramental behaviors. And that being said, drunkenness is not endorsed, and you'll see this in many groups, that overt drunkenness is not endorsed, that it's perceived as inappropriate and embarrassing. Again, drinking among the Irish has represented male bonding, and this has become somewhat stereotypical in the United States as well, where drinking is expressing your Irishness, especially on St. Patrick's Day. It's licensed to drink. It's also important to note that the notion of alcoholism, or the concept of alcoholism, is not endorsed by everyone. Not everybody accepts alcoholism as a disease or experience of non-health. And this is important for us, as most of us will be health professionals in some capacity, that we're going to come across clients that do not perceive disease or non-health in the same way that we do within our Western medical model, or with alcohol, the disease model. It may be some other force in action. It could be the spirits, it could be the evil eye, it could be a gift from God, it could be a punishment from God. It's important for us to acknowledge and validate how our clients perceive non-health or disease. Lastly, culture provides attitudes regarding drinking behavior. So again, that's related to how we perceive alcohol use, that perhaps we should behave one way or another when drinking, that overt drunkenness is not acceptable. Drinking in moderation may be acceptable. Alcohol use may be acceptable within the context of religious, holiday, or family rituals. Next, let's take a look at a few terms. Set and setting. Set refers to the individual's expectation of what the drug does to your personality. For example, we may expect that alcohol makes us laugh, that things are funnier when we drink. Setting is the social and physical environment where the drug is consumed. And I'm fairly certain that we will behave differently if we're with the family as opposed to when we're in the club with our friends. Drunken comportment, this is expectation of how we're to conduct ourselves when we're under the influence. For some of us, it may be acceptable to be loud and boisterous because that's how you act when you're drunk. For others of us, that may be inappropriate because we're, sophisticated and refined drinkers. We don't act like that. Alcohol is a disinhibitor, meaning that the rational brain is suppressed, which may lead to impulsive, unrestrained, and sometimes dangerous behaviors. Examples is we may be louder, we may be overly emotional, we may be violent, and could engage in unplanned sexual activity. Pseudo-intoxication refers to the psychological belief of how one should feel while under the influence. Kind of like if you believe you are drunk, then you are drunk. An individual may act intoxicated before the substance actually exerts its effect. In class, we talked about how alcohol affects men and women differently biologically. This slide, I'd like to take a look at some behavioral patterns associated with alcohol in women. So women that were in stable marriages are less likely to report alcohol-related problems. Also, women tend to marry men whose drinking habits match their own, which makes sense. Women are more likely to start drinking heavily later in life. And as a group, alcohol-abusing women are more likely to drink alone at home. And as I mentioned before, now, presently, it's more acceptable for women to be out in the community drinking or purchasing alcohol, more so than historically. And lastly, some statistics on alcohol in the family. Children of alcoholics are more likely to become alcoholic themselves. Adult children of alcoholics are more likely to develop alcoholism. And children of alcoholics and adult children of alcoholics are more likely to marry into families where alcoholism is prevalent. And lastly, I would like to say that alcoholism, or alcohol use rather, has declined in the last 20 years for a few reasons, but one of those reasons is definitely our increased prevention efforts, where we're more aware of risk these days with alcohol use, drug use, and more of an emphasis on our overall health, not just alcohol and drugs, but also our eating, our physical activity, our lifestyle, our environmental pollutants, and so on and so forth. So I hope that you guys will carry on that agenda with yourselves, with your families, and with your clients in your professional lives. Thank you for your attention.